There is a common assumption that global trade and the discovery of distant lands only truly began when European ships finally crossed the Atlantic. We are taught to see the oceans of the past as lonely, hostile barriers, obstacles that remained closed until the arrival of the European explorers. Yet 600 years before Columbus, a Somali scholar named Sa'id of Mogadishu was already living in the Yuan Dynasty's capital. He had mastered Mandarin, and his insights into the Chinese imperial succession were recorded by the famous traveler Ibn Battuta. Long before Europe emerged from the Middle Ages, the Horn of Africa operated as a massive maritime engine, moving African gold to the Ming court and Indian spices into the markets of the Roman Empire. Somali navigators achieved this by mastering the monsoon cycles. This map shows how they used the winds as a predictable conveyor belt, riding them toward Asia in the winter and letting the currents carry them home in the summer. To find the true origins of globalization, we have to look past the myth of passive continents and focus on the liquid bridge of the Indian Ocean. In antiquity, the Roman Empire was driven by a relentless demand for exotic luxuries. Above all else, they were willing to pay almost any price for cinnamon. This second-century sketch of a merchant ship demonstrates the scale of the vessels already working the Somali coast. Ports like Opone and Mosilon were not just stops, they were the primary outlets for this early commerce. Somali merchants created a strategic choke point, intercepting Indian cinnamon ships. This artificial bottleneck at the Horn of Africa prevented Roman vessels from sailing further east. By maintaining this barrier, they hid the spice's Indian origins, dictating prices to the Mediterranean. These early navigators were more than just traders. They were macroeconomic gatekeepers who controlled Rome's access to the riches of the East for centuries. By the medieval era, these independent coastal cities had unified into a powerful, centralized state, the Ajuran Empire. Their strength was built on engineering. They carved massive limestone channels to direct rushing water, turning dry earth into a source of agricultural wealth. As a hydraulic empire, they mastered the interior through a complex system of deep wells and irrigation along the Chevelle River. This massive agricultural surplus was the secret to their maritime power. It allowed them to feed thousands of sailors and sustain the infrastructure required for oceanic voyages. Their immense economic sovereignty is visible in these silver and bronze coins. While others relied on simple barter, the Sultanate of Mogadishu minted its own currency, stamped with the names of rulers like Sultan Ali ibn Yusuf. These coins have been unearthed as far away as the United Arab Emirates, proving the Ajuran Empire was a financial heavyweight, with a currency recognized across the entire Islamic world. This domestic wealth allowed Somali captains to build and deploy specialized maritime technology designed to master the open sea. They used Mtepe vessels, stitched with coconut fiber, to flex over coral reefs, and guided them using the kamal, a scientific tool held in the teeth to navigate by the stars with mathematical precision. This expertise allowed the Ajuran to move past middlemen and engage in direct diplomacy with Imperial China. This is how scholars like Sa'id of Mogadishu ended up in the Yuan capital, eventually receiving a prestigious jade seal from the emperor himself. It led to a striking sight, a live giraffe on a Somali sailing ship, crossing the ocean as a gift for the Ming court. For the Chinese, the giraffe represented the mythical Qilin, a sign of divine favor. Exporting these animals was a form of high-stakes diplomacy that reinforced the political legitimacy of the Chinese emperor. The relationship was one of mutual respect. Ming records show that Somali ambassadors lived in Beijing for years at a time, housed in designated quarters for state-level dialogue. The bond was so significant that the legendary Chinese admiral Zheng He launched several of his massive treasure fleets for the specific purpose of returning these Somali envoys safely to Mogadishu. This was a partnership of equals based on prosperity and science, a dynamic that stands in stark contrast to the colonial era that followed. Today, physical footprints of this era remain in the stone architecture of the Somali coast. These buildings were the centers of a world that refused to be isolated. In the ground nearby, archaeologists have found Tang, Song, and Ming dynasty coins scattered from the coast deep into the African interior. Shards of Chinese porcelain found in the ruins of ancient Somali houses tell a story of shared culture that lasted for centuries. This trail of physical evidence reveals a global economy that functioned at peak capacity long before the explorers of the 15th century set sail. The Indian Ocean was a thriving world of African science and diplomatic genius, a legacy of global connection that belongs to the navigators who mastered the stars.